Okay. Hi, Attorney Nate Amendola, criminal defense attorney in Massachusetts, here today with the criminal law in plain English. So the question or topic today is I've been accused of a crime. Or I'm being accused or investigated for the commission of a crime. What are the four things I can do to avoid making things worse? Or what are the four mistakes that I should avoid? Okay. So again, the context here is that you've either been arrested, and I'm sorry that's happened, or you are being investigated for a crime. Let's hope it stays at an investigation stage and never proceeds beyond that. But in either one of those, in either two of those cases, the advice here, or sort of the thought behind this, is the same. So the first mistake to avoid is one, talking too much. So there's this sort of anecdote, this story in criminal defense circles that a client walks into an attorney's office and he looks up on the wall and there's a big fish. And I happen to love fishing, so this is sort of appropriate for me. But there's a big fish, whatever, a tarpon or a largemouth bass. And next to the fish, there's a plaque that said, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't opened my big mouth, right? It's sort of the same thing here, right? The less you say in a criminal case is, generally speaking, always better. So I've talked a lot about this. You should not talk to the police without an attorney present. My general rule is, and I think the general thought here is that really there are some reasons strategically why a criminal defendant with a lawyer present may want to talk to the police for strategic purposes. And this is way beyond the scope of this video. But generally speaking, the rule of thumb is no. There's just no reason to talk to police, okay? So the first critical mistake, whether you're being investigated or you've been arrested, is you've just got no obligation to talk to the police. I've talked about this a lot. You've got a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Exercise that right. It can't be used against you, all right? So there's just really, you're just going to supply them with more information that's going to be hurtful to you. Even if you think it's going to be helpful, it's not. I'm telling you this. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never met somebody that's talked their way out of a crime. We've done it a few times with some police because we were present there and different circumstances. But nobody that I've ever met has talked their way out of a crime. All right, so just there's really no reason to talk. Okay, so a mistake to avoid is talking too much. By the way, this also goes for non-law enforcement people. So if you've been arrested or are being investigated for a crime, I'm sure you're going to want to talk to your spouse or your brother, your dad, or your uncle, or somebody. It's really not advisable to talk to non-privileged people about what's going on in your case. The reason for that is multifold. Number one, you don't want to if you're saying something to somebody, that's an admission. And if the prosecutor finds out about this, you really don't want to make that person, your spouse, a witness. I mean, spouses are a little different because you've got a spousal privilege. But let's just say you're talking to your dad and you said, Dad, this is what happened, or whatever. And somehow the prosecution finds out about this. They subpoena your dad and, they can, hey, what did Johnny tell you about this crime, right? Maybe they can compel the dad to, in court, at a trial to testify for impeachment purposes or something. So just really, there's no reason for you to be talking to anybody. I know you want to. It's the natural thing. I love to talk. And work out problems with other people. But in this case, really, mistake number one, don't talk too much, okay? Mistake number two is jumping to conclusions, right? So folks get arrested or they're investigated for a crime. They think, it's really not a big deal. It's just a misdemeanor, or it's a traffic infraction, or it's a sex case, but I didn't do it, so it's really no big deal. I know it seems bizarre that people think like this, but we get calls all the time where people are like, I'm not really worried about this. I can represent myself. I do get lawyers who call me with that sometimes, get a real estate lawyer that thinks he's going to represent himself, on a sexual assault or drug possession case or whatever the case may be. I don't understand that because it's a totally different area of the law, but you just don't want to jump to a conclusion. that's just not going to help your case. These things really, criminal cases require a lot of thought and analysis. And I understand it. You may be innocent, and you want to. The government doesn't have any evidence, or whatever you think is going on. You just really don't want to jump to conclusions. I think I tried to blend some Stoic philosophy in these videos. Stoic philosophy has been very helpful to me. And sort of like the maxim, or one of the maxims in Stoic philosophy is, you want to respond, not react, right? And responding, I think inherent in the definition of a response is, some mental processes, right? Some thought, right? You want to take. That's why people want to sleep on things. You want to take some time to process and think something through rather than react, because generally speaking, a reaction just doesn't necessarily get you to where you need to be, right? So you want to be thoughtful about what you're doing, okay? Mistake number 3 is failure to talk to a defense attorney, okay? So sort of like what I was talking about with mistake number 2, but you've been arrested, you're being investigated for a crime. Your first call should be to the defense attorney. Find them through asking some friends, some colleagues. Maybe you have an attorney that's represented you for an estate issue, and you can ask them for a referral, or however you find a defense attorney. But you should really call and have an initial consultation. Talk about what you know, talk about the facts a little bit. That's confidential. Get some advice or just sort of an overview of what can happen and what might happen in your case. So again, you really want to talk to somebody that's experienced and just does, in my opinion, criminal defense, or has a lot of experience with criminal defense. I think there's this notion out there to non-lawyers that a lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer, right? And a lawyer who does civil litigation should know how to do criminal and should know how to do real estate. And here's how I think you should think about this. If you go to a doctor for a knee problem, right, you're going to go to a doctor that specializes in orthopedics or whatever it is, okay? If you've got a heart issue, you're going to go to a cardiologist. You're not going to go to a general practitioner or brain surgeon, right? The same principle applies here. The specialization is, this is where we are in the world. People are specialized and siloed down. So you should take advantage of that and talk to a specialist who just deals with criminal law, and maybe even more specifically, who just deals with your issues. There are some lawyers that just do DUIs. There are some lawyers that do just sexual assaults. There are some lawyers that just do drug cases. Sort of rare, but if you can find those folks and that's what you're looking for, you should reach out to them, all right? And then I think the fourth thing you want to avoid, or the mistake you want to avoid, is putting too much pressure on your attorney for a quick response or quick resolution. I understand, we get it. This has been, if you've been arrested or investigated for a crime, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Your heart's beating, there's a lot going on, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. There's a desire to get answers quickly. There's a desire to get things resolved quickly. There are certainly some situations whereby you want the case to get resolved quickly. Maybe a witness, is going to move away, or a prosecutor, the more favorable prosecutor is going to come in, or there's a certain judge you want on the bench or something. There's exceptions to every rule. But the general rule in the criminal defense case, as my friend Ted Barone said, is, look, criminal cases are like fine wine. They get better with age. And there's lots of reasons for that. Criminal cases take a long time to resolve. Those are the facts, okay? And so putting too much pressure on your lawyer to get back to you quickly or to resolve the case, I think is, likely going to backfire, because in my view, a really good criminal defense lawyer is thoughtful and also very busy, right? The best lawyers are busy because they've got a lot of cases, right? And so the way we work, and I think a lot of the good criminal defense lawyers work like this, is yes, you've got to multitask, but really you can only do one thing at a time, all right? So you want to if you've got a question or a series of questions, I think it's best to email your lawyer, right? And that way he or she can think through them, research them if needed, and then get back to you. Yes, there are some things, lots of things a lawyer knows off the top of his or her head. But things are so nuanced, and every situation, these cases are totally fact specific. So really, if you've got questions, and you will, you want your lawyer to really think those through, research them, cogitate on them for a while, and not really pressure them for a quick response or pressure them for a quick resolution, because you don't know what you're doing. You're not a criminal defense lawyer, right? And you may think you know how to get a case resolved. I mean, you may think you understand the state of the evidence. And yes, your lay opinion and your lay understanding of things is important. But the law is so nuanced that really you've hired somebody, for a reason. And as my friend says, it's like when you get in an airplane. You get in an airplane, you're not walking up to the cockpit and telling the pilot how to fly, when to land, or anything like that. You hire them, the airline, to bring you to where you need to be safely. It's the same thing with the criminal defense lawyer. I understand the desire to, and you should be involved in the process. But again, you don't really want to put too much pressure on them to get back to you quickly, because you want them to think about it. And yes, there are some things that are emergencies, and you're going to have to let your lawyer figure out, or your lawyer's team figure out, what's an emergency and what's not. So those are the 4 critical mistakes to avoid when you are being investigated or charged with a crime. I hope this helps.